Hello, and welcome back to the Follow Your Spark podcast. It's your host, Gina Casbarro, and I'm coming on for an episode that's an invitation to pause and reflect and take stock of all the learnings and lessons and themes that have been showing up for you in your life since March 2025. And I am doing this today because this episode is airing on Tuesday, October 21st, which is the new moon in Libra. And whether you're into astrology or not, this moment, and really every moment, there is a powerful opportunity to reflect so that you can distill all the learnings and lessons and insights from all the things you've experienced in your life. So if you've been craving an opportunity to slow down and tune in and reflect, and if life feels like it's been busy and chaotic lately, and you're craving that moment to pause, this episode is for you. And if you're curious to share a little bit about eclipse season, eclipses happen about every 6 months. And we just came off of one that was happening in September. So there was a lunar eclipse on September 7th. There was a solar eclipse on September 21st. And now this new moon that we have today, this new moon in Libra, marks the edge of this container, of this eclipse season portal. People often refer to this time as, because eclipse seasons are an opportunity that can spark major change. They can be a catalyst for growth, a time of endings, a time of new beginnings, a time to really up level in our identity or step into new chapters of our lives. So it can be a really powerful time to intentionally reflect and to be able to distill all of the learnings and lessons and gems and treasures that are available to us through that experience. And if we just keep rushing through life, it can be hard to distill those things. It can be hard to actually learn from our past, to feel grateful for our past, to see and track all the ways that we've grown. So this is a powerful invitation to do so. And eclipse season themes are often connected to each other. So the last eclipse season we went through before this was in March of 2025. That's why I said this is a powerful moment to reflect, not just on what you've been experiencing these last 6 to 8 weeks, also what you've been experiencing these past 6+ months. So this episode is going to share powerful reflection questions, intentional practices you can use and lean into to make the most of this time so that you can reap all the rewards of your experiences, of your challenges, of the ways that you're ready to grow. So you ready? Let's dive in. The first thing I'll share about why this is important, this came up on 2 of my client calls this morning, actually, of people talking about how they're not used to setting aside time in their calendar to reflect. We were having a conversation about thoughts and beliefs and what they wanted to believe about themselves. And when it comes to affirmations, if we don't actually spend the time thinking through new thoughts and finding evidence for how new beliefs could be true, how we are stronger than we think, how we are more capable than we think, it can be hard for those new self-concepts and those new beliefs to actually sink in. So instead of just thinking, I'll reflect on this at some point, I'll think about this on some point, I asked her, no, where are you going to make time in your schedule for these reflective practices? She was getting ready for this big art launch coming up this week. And we were talking about how she wanted to feel, what she wanted to believe. And then we looked at, okay, when can you take time in your schedule for these journal questions? For these questions that would help her cultivate the beliefs that she wanted to have. And again, she was sharing how she's never really done that. She's never prioritized time in her schedule for things like this. It's normally just, all the things that feel productive, the things that it feels like we have to do. So if you are not used to prioritizing time and space for this, you're not alone. I also recorded a podcast episode about this last week, about why it's so challenging for so many of us to carve out intentional time and space for reflection, for self-care, for practices that nourish you, mind, body, and spirit. So if that feels like a really big struggle, check out that episode from last week. And I invite you to come to this episode and listen to this episode from a place of curiosity and possibility. Because again, the power of making intentional time for this is that you get to learn from your experience instead of just moving full speed ahead. You actually get time to evaluate, ask yourself questions about what really matters so that you can create your life in alignment with what matters. Because if you don't take the time to ask yourself these questions, it can be very easy to live a life that is not a reflection of what actually matters to you. Okay, so you ready for these reflection questions? The first one is looking back on the past 6 months or a little beyond 6 months from March 2025 till now, what themes or opportunities for growth have been showing up for you the strongest? I'll give you some examples of what's showing up for me, and maybe this will spark ideas or reflections for you. So for me, I've been noticing these themes to look at where I fall into the trap of people pleasing and fall into this desire to look externally for love, for affirmation, for reassurance. And this is a theme that's shown up for me many times throughout my entire life. I actually just did this whole practice looking back on my life, but it's shown up many times throughout my life. And I've expanded and had transformations around this area many times throughout my life. And the past 6 months, it's shown up again in a new way. And I feel like it's an even deeper invitation to source my own self, my own sense of self worth, of validation, of affirmation internally instead of externally. So I've been feeling confronted by this theme the past 6 months. So that's one big one for me. Another big one for me that, again, I can see that has been happening throughout my life, and I peel back layers of it in different ways, is focusing on the gap versus the gain. And this is a concept. I'm reading this book right now called 10x is easier than 2x. These same authors also wrote a book called The Gap versus the Gain. But this concept talks about how, especially entrepreneurs who are very growth oriented and always focusing on this next level, is this tendency and really addiction and sickness of looking at how far you have to go versus being able to celebrate how far you've come. And this is, again, a theme that has shown up for me many, many times back to my days as a store manager at Lululemon, where I was constantly focused on revenue and numbers. And no matter how much we went over expected revenue goals, how it never felt enough. And I can see this pattern show up in my own life and how it can make growth and expansion that much more arduous and challenging and unpleasant if I'm focused on how far I have to go and judging myself and shaming myself for where I'm at versus letting the energy of celebration and gratitude and confidence fuel me and inspire me moving forward, looking back and seeing how far I've come. So those are two huge themes that have been showing up for me in the past 6 months and beyond, and right now are coming to a head. Because again, eclipse seasons can really be like a magnifying glass to unearth and uncover and bring to the surface things that we're ready to transform, things that we're ready to transmute, things that we're ready to accept and love about ourselves. Sometimes nothing needs to be healed other than, can we offer ourselves more love and acceptance and let go of the shame and judgment that we might be carrying for whatever failure or shortcoming we might be judging ourselves for having. So, question number one to reflect on: what themes have been showing up for you? What opportunities for growth have been showing up for you? Number two, what old ways of being are you ready to let go of? Again, for me, it's letting go of seeking love and validation externally, letting go of measuring my worth by numbers or how much it feels like I accomplished or produced, and this tendency of never allowing myself to celebrate, never letting anything I've done or created be enough, and constantly focusing on what's next or the next milestone. These are things and ways of being I am ready to let go of and transform and also love myself through. So, what ways of being are you ready to let go of? Number 3, where have you been judging yourself that you're ready to offer yourself more love and acceptance? And this is a big one because I don't know if you've heard the quote of what you resist persists, what you fight strengthens. So this can show up in terms of emotions. Oftentimes, I see this with clients all the time of people judging themselves for having an emotion like confusion or anxiety or fear. And when we add that layer of judgment, when we resist it, when we tell ourselves we shouldn't be feeling this way, or I should be past this by now, whatever your this is, that is like a pressure cooker that chokes off any kind of clarity, any kind of creativity, any kind of spaciousness, any kind of healing. And it makes it that much harder to do whatever it is you're either trying to do or move past because we're adding that layer of tension on top of it. So, this is an invitation to ask yourself, where have you been judging yourself? What have you been resisting about yourself? What have you been making yourself wrong about? And what would it be like to invite in more love, more acceptance, and see how that shifts or changes things? Number 4, where are you ready to start doing things differently? For me, when it comes to this seeking validation externally, one practice that I'm really leaning into is that art of celebration. Daily, all the time, asking myself, what can I celebrate? What can I celebrate about this day? What can I celebrate about myself? And doing it enough until that becomes so practiced that that feels familiar, that feels comfortable instead of the default of what feels comfortable right now, which is looking at the gap and what's missing and what's lacking. So, leading into celebration for sure is one. I'm also intentionally exploring what I can offer myself because I'm always asking myself this question of what can I offer others? How can I be in service to others? So, turning this lens again on myself of how can I be in service to myself? What would it look like to create a schedule that's even more loving and nourishing and supportive? What else can I rearrange to give myself more power and freedom? And this is also deeply inspired by this book, 10x is easier than 2x, because it's a lot about these concepts of 10xing your life. 10xing in a certain area or a certain goal requires an identity shift. It requires oftentimes a reallocation of time, money, energy, and resources. It requires doing things differently because when we try to 2x, again, it's like these small, tiny improvements that maybe don't really get us that far. So being able to imagine what 10xing would be like requires letting go of a lot of things that aren't working and leaning into very intentionally things that are. So I've been exploring what that will look like for me, and I'm really excited to lean into that and put my findings into practice over the next 2 months and beyond as we close out this year and begin the next. And another big intention for me, again, is how can I love myself and give myself the love and attention and validation and assurance that I sometimes seek and crave from other people, knowing that really I'm the only one who can source those emotions. So, what does it look like to do that for myself? That's a question that I'm deep in the process of reflecting on. And then the next question is, where do you feel like you are on the cusp of a breakthrough? And why is it important to keep going instead of revert back to what is safe and familiar? And I feel like this is a really important question that I've been asking myself lately, because as I think about the next 2.5 months of the year, I have big plans and I have big goals and big intentions. And part of me is like, why am I doing this? I'm also kind of tired and it's fall and winter, and there's a part of me that's craving rest and slowing down and really going inward. And my why for continuing on the trajectory that I'm on and continuing to pursue what feels like these big goals, these 10x goals, is because I also believe that in the pursuit of these goals, it will also create more space for the rest and the rejuvenation and the going inward and spending time with family and friends, all these other things that I'm craving, me continuing to pursue this 10x goal is going to be a catalyst for the creation of that. And it's reminding my brain of that even though this growth feels challenging, it feels like I'm experiencing some tension as I push up against these growth edges, this is worthwhile to me because I can see the possibility for how it's going to transform my life and how asking myself these questions of how do I want to reallocate my time? How do I want to reallocate my resources? What do I want to believe about myself? What identity do I want to step into and believe in? Is going to expand every other area of my life, not just work. And remembering it's not just about work, it's about how am I also creating time for all of the other things of my life that matter to me most. So that's why leaning into some of these things that feel uncomfortable, that feel confronting, matters. The same with how I show up in relationships and how I show up in communication. I've been doing a lot of internal work around that as well, reading books, self coaching, getting coached to really explore my own patterns and what is creating some of the challenges I've been facing this past year in relationships and communication, because I'm committed to continuing to grow and expand in that realm as well. One of my core values is connection and authenticity and having deep intimacy in relationships. So, bringing to the surface the things that feel like they are getting in the way of that for me is important. And it's important to me to continue to have self awareness and reflect and learn how I can show up even more authentically, even more honestly, from a place that knows I am already enough. I am already worthy. I don't need anyone else's love or validation to fulfill me. And I believe continuing to explore this path will open up the possibility for even deeper and deeper connections now and in the future. So it's really important to me to lean into these areas of growth right now. So for you, again, ask yourself, where does it feel like you're on the cusp of a breakthrough? Where is your brain maybe asking you that question of like, do I really want to do that? Do I really want to pursue that intention? Do I really want to keep moving forward in that direction when it feels crunchy or challenging? Ask yourself why. Why is that important to you? Which ties into and connects to this last question of what matters to you most now? When you think about the last 2.5 months we have left in this year and beyond, what matters to you most in your life? Are there particular areas in your life that you're really passionate about growing in? Is there a breakthrough you would love to have? Why? Why does it matter so much? Again, I ask my clients this all the time, and it's one of the biggest things we focus on when it comes to goal setting, because if we're not clear about our why, it's going to be very easy to fall back into old patterns, to fall back into old ways of being, to do things just in the default way that you're used to doing them, because change is often uncomfortable. Moving past your comfort zone often feels tense. It feels like this push pull of expansion and contraction at the same time. It can involve a lot of uncertainty, a lot of trust as you're moving into unknown and unfamiliar territory. So spend some time thinking about what you desire and why it matters. And the last question that's coming through actually for me right now is, after you spend time on these reflection questions, asking yourself, of all the things that came up, what feels important to prioritize? What can I take from these learnings, these reflections, and integrate and put into practice? What am I going to start doing? What am I going to stop doing? What am I going to do differently moving forward? That's a really powerful question that you can ask yourself. So, this week in particular, I invite you to carve out some time and space in your calendar for reflection. Like, look at your calendar if you're at your computer right now, or when you get home, if you're listening to this in the car or anything else, look at your calendar and see, when can you put time on your schedule for reflection? And what do you want that to look like for you? For example, that could look like sitting down with a journal and a cup of tea. It could look like some of my favorite practices. One is spending time in nature. So I do something called conversations with nature. So this is a way to open up to intuitive guidance and clarity, whatever messages that will serve you most right now. So I would typically go somewhere in nature by myself, no one else, just alone, and take a journal, take a pen or maybe multiple pens or markers if you like drawing or doodling. And if you feel called, you can also bring something to offer to that natural place. That could be flowers or herbs or something. And take yourself to that spot in nature. Maybe you're going to go for a hike. And before you take that first step on the trail, you can set the intention of, may I be open to whatever intuitive guidance, insight, and wisdom will serve me most in this moment. And then you can offer your flowers or your herbs if you have something, or start walking and see if there's a special tree or stream that calls to you that you can maybe leave an offering for. And then let yourself wander, let your mind wander and see what begins to float in. And you might notice certain animals that show up. You might notice certain colors that catch your attention. You might notice the sound of the wind blowing through the trees, and that makes you think of something. A song might pop into your head. There's all different kinds of ways that your intuition can talk to you. And what's most important is that you set the intention and invite that intuitive wisdom to come through. So you've set the intention, you've begun walking or exploring your path in nature, whatever that is. And then if you brought your journal, now is a great time to journal and capture some of those reflections, whether it's the open-ended question that you shared at the beginning of your hike, if you set an intention, or spending time on some of these questions that I shared in this podcast today. And if you want them written out, I am going to email this list to my email list. So go to ginacasbarro.com/transformational-tools to sign up for that. You'll also get access to my top 15 transformational tools that can spark confidence and clarity and inspiration. So that's a phenomenal resource for right now as well. And like I said, you'll receive these questions if you want to reflect on these questions. So time in nature, conversations with nature are a fantastic practice to open up to intuitive guidance. And then journaling in general is an amazing practice, particularly something I call intuitive journaling. So you can write one of these questions at the top of a page and then just allow your pen to write. Stream of consciousness. You don't have to think about it. Just see what comes through. And you can begin this practice by placing your hands over your heart, taking a couple deep breaths, and again, setting that intention of, may I be open to the intuitive guidance and wisdom that will serve me most right now. May I be open to the messages on my heart from my inner wisdom that I need to hear. And then allow your pen to write. Give yourself that space to reflect. Other favorite practices of mine are always going to be music and dance. So if that is similar for you, maybe you put on a playlist or you allow yourself to move freely in your home, in your room, and then you journal. After you make space physically in your body, then you can make space in your mind and your heart for these messages to come through. Also, doodling, drawing is another great way to get out of your head and into your heart. So a really fun practice that I heard actually on another dear friend's podcast is to get a journal, place it on your head, and ask the question of, may I be open to whatever spirit, whatever team of light wants to connect with me right now, and may I be open to receive their messages. And once I feel like that energy is with me, normally my head will start to nod yes, feeling like, okay, I've made this connection with this being of light. And then I will open my journal and ask, who's here? Who's with me? And sometimes I'll get the answer of a guardian angel or a higher self or my heart or a goddess or something else like that. And then I will ask them to write through me or draw through me. And this is when I might start doodling or just might start making shapes and Poems often come through for me. So really just getting out of your head and allowing that creative, intuitive space to flow. So that's another really fun exercise and practice that can help you unlock intuitive insight. And then the last practice I'll share that I find really important is having a place to track this evidence, to track these themes and these reflections and these insights that are coming up. So, keeping a dedicated journal for things like this. I have something that I call a year ahead journal that I offer my clients. We do this year ahead intuitive coaching session, and we pull this oracle card spread for every single month of the year, a theme card for the year in general. And each month of the journal, there's space to track evidence, to track signs, to track insights and themes and messages that are coming through. Because the more you track this over time, again, next eclipse season, you'll have all this record of what you experienced and what you were learning and how you were growing and the messages you were receiving. And it will make your reflections that much more potent when you're able to look back over time and see all the ways you've grown, all the things you've learned, all the impact of what happened when you trusted yourself and you followed your intuition. And this can be really powerful, again, treasure to help you strengthen your identity, your self-concept, your intuition muscles. So I definitely recommend keeping track of these reflections in some way, shape, or form. So I hope this episode inspires you to take some intentional time this week for reflection. And I hope you take a moment to celebrate and acknowledge yourself for your growth, for all the ways you've transformed, and for how you are already enough, and that there's nothing you need to do to be worthy of your own love, of your own validation, and to invite in more acceptance and peace and love into your heart, and know that there's nothing you have to do to deserve that. And I know it can be incredibly powerful to talk through things like this with someone, to have someone who can help be that mirror for you, to help you see yourself from a different perspective, to help you uncover your own inner wisdom and truths, and help you clarify what you're learning, what your intentions are, what really matters to you. And that's exactly the kind of work I get up to with my one-on-one coaching clients. And I offer free clarity calls so you can experience this transformational work for yourself. These calls are all about clarifying a vision for your life that lights you up. You'll be guided through an experience to ask yourself these questions. What really matters to you now? If you could create anything in your life, what would you want to create? If you could release these things that have been holding you back and step into your next level self, what would that look like? What would that feel like? What are the biggest challenges and obstacles that are getting in your way? And how could you overcome them? If you would love to have time and space to talk through that, to be witnessed and seen by someone who can help you uncover your inner truth, this call is for you. It's also an opportunity to see what it would be like to have ongoing support, to have someone that you can talk to week after week, month after month, to help you clarify your goals, build up your self-concept, your identity, your belief, and take inspired actions towards them every single day, every single week, so that you can blaze your own path and create your most authentic, inspired life. So if that is calling to you, if your heart is like, yes, I would love time and space to explore that, go to ginacasbarro.com/eclipse clarity call. Because right now, for the month of October, I am offering a special eclipse clarity call in honor of this season that we're in. And during that call, I'm offering a special bonus where I will pull an oracle card reading to see what is that theme that's showing up for you. That's this opportunity for you to up level, and what insight or wisdom or ritual would serve you the most to help you do that, to help you step into your next chapter, your next evolution, whatever that is for you. So again, if that speaks to you, go to ginacasbarro.com/eclipse clarity call to book one of those calls And I can't wait to talk about what that vision for your life is that is lighting you up and what is the next level you are ready to step into. All right, my friend, I am wishing you a restorative, reflective, transformative week, and I can't wait to talk to you soon.